Hello popcorners and welcome back to Popcorning Piggy. This week I got asked how I have built my tiered CNC cage. So I thought I would give you kind of my top tips and the main materials that I've used. So if you're unaware, this is my 3-tiered CNC cage. So I have the bottom cage with Digger and Finn in, then I have the top which is Rolo and Miko, and then I have this section which currently is storage, but as and when I have fosters I can add on a 2x2 section here, and this all becomes another cage, so it kind of then becomes like an L shape. So that was the main reason why this CNC cage got built, instead of what we had before, which was like our IKEA DIY kind of cage. So the more space was needed. So that's why I have storage like above a cage as opposed to under a cage. So that's the first thing. So the basics of the cage are CNC grids. I use two types. I use the traditional kind of ones with like holes, and then I have a kind of all plastic sheet, which is just like a metal square. They're a lot cheaper, they're a little bit more flimsy, so you have to be careful where you use them, and I'll explain a little bit in a minute where I use those. But those are great in terms of, like, obviously the see-through ones let out the hay, whereas the ones that are all plastic don't. So that's the first thing. The second thing is your best friend is cable ties. The connectors are great. I particularly love the connectors I actually got with the plastic ones more so than the traditional CNC ones. The traditional CNC ones, which are these white ones that just pop off with like nothing, then I find that those are a bit too loose. So these ones are better, but also cable ties are your best friend. With this cage, if you don't use cable ties, I would worry that it would fall apart, just because you have so many different connections, and especially with the way I've built it. So obviously I have a 2x3 here that is completely like unsupported by 2 grids, so that's quite a lot of weight, especially with Miko up top, to carry. So I'll explain how I've strengthened that, but cable ties is my number one. I think when you're doing tiered cages, you have to use cable ties, and literally use a cable tie every time there's a connection. You know, I've got 1, 2, 3 there, I think. I've got 4 in other places. Like, use cable ties everywhere. They're so cheap. Once they're on, it just means that, like, you know it's not going to break. So that's kind of like the basis. Then the other thing I would say is, if you can get them, is there are actual specific CNC supports, which I'll hopefully have a picture right now on the screen. There's one here, I think there's one over here, and then the others are kind of under here where the main bulk of the weight is. And these are just great in terms of helping the weight, distributing the weight, just reinforcing the cage. I, again, don't think I could have it as like unsupported as I have, without the one bar there. I've got the main, like I say, where the main bulk is, because that's 3 cages at a time, so I've got the main supports there. But the supports are definitely, they're expensive, but they're well worth it. I have 4, and I've always, like, they were expensive to get. I think, I can't even remember, I think it was like 30 or 60 pounds. But if you're going down the tiered route, again, it just adds that support, and it's so important, because the last thing you want to do is have a guinea pig fall through and hurt themselves, or, you know, the cage to, you know, fall apart, guinea pigs hurt themselves, or even escape. So any way you can support it in any way is really important. I feel like I'm getting photobombed right now. Kind of. Okay, so let me talk through the steps that I went into making the tiered cage. Number 1, step 1, was actually planning out the cage. So like I've said, this is 2 cages for probably 75% of the time, and then I have the 3rd add-on cage. So I had to figure out how I was going to do that, which obviously if you're planning it on paper is really easy. You just, you know, kind of play around with squares and figure it out. And obviously if you've done CNC cages before, it's a lot easier than if you're trying to do it brand new. But that's the first thing I would do, is actually plan it out, not only to make sure obviously that things fit, but also to make sure you have enough grids. Like I have probably over or near enough, especially when I've got the third cage on, over 100 grids for this 3-tier cage, which is why I have the mixture of the two. So yeah, plan it out, make sure you've got enough grids. You will need more grids than you think, which is my top tip when planning. Is a lot of people, when they do kind of CNC grids, sometimes, do you mind? I'm trying to talk. Oi, oi, thank you. When you're planning it out, a lot of people will miss out the base of the bottom CNC cage. This has a base because, again, it just helps in terms of the whole structure. So there's obviously a base here, but I've put a base on the bottom CNC cage too. And obviously when I add the extension on, that too has a base, because without the base, it's a bit wobbly. So cable ties and bases, really, really important in terms of the structural identity of your tiered cage. So then you've got your plan, you know what you're doing, you've worked out how many grids you need, how many connectors, you know, potentially how many cable ties, although cable ties, like I say, are so cheap, you can just buy like 5 packets for £10 and then you've got like probably like 300 cable ties. Then actually work out or start to build it. What I tend to find is the easiest is to build the bottom CNC grid. So I've built this is a 2x4, so this cage actually finishes here, and this door right here actually opens up right there. So these two pretty much come out and explore most of the time. So that's why they've got a 2x4. And the reason I did that is obviously, again, this has more CNC grids and 2 bar supports, I think, to help the support of the third cage when I add it. So that's why it splits there. But again, that was really, really important to know that I needed to add that structural. So by having a split and everything, it adds the support not only for the storage, but also the third cage. So that's where I started. So I built the 2x4, added on the extra kind of grids, obviously, for the rest of it. And then I basically built upwards. So then I would have built like the second bit. And I think at the time, actually, I did build the third cage. I built all 3 cages at the same time. So then I would have built like the L shape. And then I would build the base of the third cage. So this base. And then again, I would add up like the sides of it. So it's making sure that you do it in stages, and if you do it kind of one by one as if you're adding to it, it's a lot easier to reverse and fix something if you've realised that maybe something doesn't work from the plan that you did. The other top tip right now is to always build this where you're going to put it, because as soon as you do 2x2 grids, it's not going to fit through a door, or it's not going to fit through a standard door. So always make sure when you get to, you know, 2x2 grids in terms of like height and width, build it where it's going to go, because you can't move it afterwards. And also you don't want to move it, like obviously you don't want to move it until you've cable tied it, because things will just fall apart, but also like it's not going to fit in the majority of places. A 2x2 might fit like up and down stairs or something, but it doesn't fit through my doors. And so as a 2x3, you know, a 2x3 by whatever it is, I can't move it anywhere. Like I can move it in terms of like forward, back, side, but it's not going to fit up and down stairs. It's not going to fit through the door. So definitely make sure you're building this where it's actually going to live. Then step 3, or as you're building it, certainly, because some of the support you'll need to add before you add grids, but then I would also consider strengthening further. So I've mentioned I've got 4 support bars. I would have liked to have maybe have had 2 or 3 more, but because I was in a time pinch when I built this cage, I needed to figure out another way to do that. And the way I actually did that was to add more grids on connections, which obviously helps in terms of distributing the weight again, you know, just not putting the pressure on all the joints. It just helps in terms of the support. So that's what I've got. I've got 1 support and then 2 kind of connector grids here. It's not perfect when I add, or as I come to potentially needing to tweak things, I will certainly be adding probably 2 more, if not 3 more support bars. But for the moment it works, you know, everything is saved by the cable ties. I can't stress how important the cable ties are to this project. But yeah, so hopefully that's helped you if you want to build your own kind of 3-tiered cage. Obviously you don't need to go as elaborate as I have. You can even go as far as some people have, like 1, 2 and 3. I just personally can't figure out a way to do that without actually making it difficult to spot clean or even to clean. I like at the moment the access point I have here, obviously because I can get my head in there. I still catch my head on there, but I can at least get in and clean properly. Whereas if I was just having like 1, 2, 3, I would be dropping or somehow having to drop a CNC grid and fitting in 35 centimetres of space to clean, and I just physically don't, like, I wouldn't be comfortable doing that every day, which is how often I spot clean, and of course they get cleaned out properly, you know, every 4 to 6 days. So I just physically can't work out a way to do that. Lots of people have done it, but for me personally it just seems a lot of effort in terms of cleaning. So this is the best way that I've come up with it. I hope if you are thinking about doing a tiered CNC cage, this has at least alerted you as to my top tips as to how I've made it work, you know, some of the materials you need, some of the support, some of the ways I've got around, you know, having lots and lots of unsupported areas. Hello. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll be back next week for another one. See you all then.